All right, students, today we are going to work on the Industrial Revolution, beginnings of it. And so it led to a lot of growth and expansion in our country. All right, until the mid-1700s, people lived mostly where they were and didn't move around too much, on farms mostly. But during the mid-1700s, like right before the Revolution, French and Indian War, people started moving west, and you knew that because that's part of what caused the French and Indian War. And during that time, also, Britain and inventors in Britain were making machines to do a lot of the work that had been done by hand before. Specifically, this had to do with making cloth. First, you had to spin the fabric or the fiber into thread. So like the wool or the cotton, but mostly wool because cotton wasn't real useful just yet um, until the cotton gin had been made. But you had to spin that into thread, and then that had to be woven into cloth. And that had all been done by hand before, but now they were using machines. And this period of time is known as the Industrial Revolution. All right, so this thing comes to the US, and it doesn't get to the United States until around 1800. And mills and factories first come to the New England area because they needed water power to drive the machinery. There's a little chart up here on this slide, and you also have a picture on page 348 in your textbook that shows you, it looks almost like a Dr. Seuss drawing. But it had like wheels and pulleys and stuff that drove all the machinery inside of that. And New England had plenty of small, swift-flowing rivers, and so they made use of that to drive this machinery. And also New England had a plentiful workforce because a lot of these people had small farms, and they don't need all of the children to work on the farm, on the family farm. They can send those children, some of them, to work in these factories. All right, so some of the new inventions were these. There was a water frame and a spinning jenny that used to spin fiber into thread, and then the power loom took that thread and wove it into cloth. So please make the distinction between the two machines. There was a thing that would pull the fiber out, pull it out, and make it into thread. And then there was a separate thing, the power loom, you see a picture of it down there, that takes that thread and weaves it into cloth. It's two separate machines. Of course, you have to start with cotton or wool to get the fiber at first, all right? But those two machines, separate machines, were what drove the Industrial Revolution, first in Britain and then in the United States. One of the most important inventions in the United States was the cotton gin. Gin is short for engine, all right? Cotton engine, meaning that this is something that was made things happen quickly, okay? An engine was something that made things happen quickly. It could quickly remove seeds from cotton, making it way more profitable. All right, so let me tell you just a little bit about cotton. I used to live in Mississippi where they harvest cotton by the ton. And when cotton gets ripe, it is in a tight wad like this, and then it puffs open, and like a piece of popcorn almost. And inside of that puff, on the plants, inside of that are real tiny, tiny little thorny seeds. Well, of course, you can't use that to make into cloth. And those seeds previously had to be picked out by hand. And I will show you a video of this machine working in class, but that took hours and hours of time, which is why cotton had not been a good cash crop up until the time of the cotton gin. But when Eli Whitney comes up with the cotton gin, now cotton becomes profitable because this thing will remove the seeds for you. You have to turn the thing by hand, but it will remove the seeds. But Eli Whitney doesn't sit down and invent the cotton gin, okay? So, like I said at the bottom, let's back up. So Whitney gets a contract from the government to make 10,000 rifles in 28 months. Well, Eli Whitney is like some kind of brilliant, think of him as the Bill Gates of his time, except he's more of an engineer than like a hands-on engineer than a computer engineer. And Whitney is like the little guy at the bottom, what am I going to do now? So 10,000 rifles in a month, 28 months is a lot of rifles for back then because you have to build each one from the beginning to the end by hand. So he devises this manufacturing plan that uses interchangeable parts. This seems like child's play to us. We're thinking, why would you make things any other way? But back then, this is a brand new idea. This was a way to make large quantities of uniform pieces that can replace any other piece of the same kind. So, in other words, instead of one person sitting down and handcrafting each rifle or whatever else it is, whatever it is you're making, plow, whatever it is you're making, instead of crafting that thing from beginning to end by hand, okay, you're going to now I will make the barrel of the rifle. And each barrel will be cast with a mold, and we will make every single one of them the same. Each firing pin will be made with a mold, and every single one of them will be exactly the same. The stocks will all be exactly the same. Now, this is not new to us. I mean, you would wonder, why would you not think of it sooner? But it had not been thought of sooner. But this way, if a rifle gets broken, you only replace one piece, not the whole thing. And on the battlefield, this is important. Okay, and this opens a whole new way of producing many, many different kinds of things, even up to and including cars in the early 1900s. All right, so in 1790, this is after the Revolution, after we're a country, Congress passes a patent law to protect the rights of investors and inventors. And if you invest in something to back someone, the inventor, it gives you the legal right to make money from that invention, and no one else can copy it. So pretend that Whitney needs money to start up a company. He goes out and he gets investors to help him start up his company. And if he comes up with an idea, then no one else can copy it because of the patent law, and only he and his investors can make money from it. Britain also has those laws, but as you know, like I said at the bottom, laws are made to be broken. I mean, people get around them. And as you can see, this is how the Industrial Revolution comes to the United States. Guys, it's not something you need to remember for a test or anything, but for life. This is called industrial espionage. When you steal ideas from another company or some other person who's invented something, that's called industrial espionage. Espionage meaning spying. Okay, so here's the first case. A British worker named Samuel Slater, that was his picture on the previous frame, brought some, he'd been working at a British mill. He started out as a young man working in a British mill that was, as you see at the bottom, taking fiber and spinning it into thread. Those are spools of thread sitting on, big machines that spin like wool into thread. And he had been working in the mill so long that he could memorize the design of how the machines work, how they were built and how they worked. So in 1790, he came to the United States and built copies of those British machines over here in the United States. Those are spinning mills. They don't weave the thread into cloth. They just pull the fiber, the wool fiber or the cotton fiber, into thread that then can later be made into cloth. As you'll see, he ends up putting it all in one place, but not yet. All right. Now, Lowell, this is a little bit later in time, Lowell improves on Slater's idea. Lowell builds mills that not only spin the fiber into thread, but under the same roof, he then builds the machines to put the thread into cloth. This is called a factory system. Now let me tell you a little bit about Lowell. Lowell does this because he goes to Britain. He literally is a spy, an industrial spy. He went to England and somehow arranged to have a tour of one of these mills where they had these big machines that were making thread into cloth, weaving it into cloth, a big weaving machine. He must have known someone, been pals with somebody that got him a tour. And of course, he would not be allowed to take a pencil and a piece of paper in there to draw pictures while he's in there, just like as if you got a tour of some wonderful factory that made something in the United States. You probably wouldn't be allowed to take pictures of it and then take it over to Japan or somewhere. But if you had a very good brain and you could memorize it, which probably that would take too much memory for today's machines, but back in those days, the machines weren't all that complex. The minute Slater got away from that mill, he went back to his hotel room and made drawings of everything that he saw, brought it back here to the United States, and set up his own mills. Okay? And so this is important because he now can make the whole piece of cloth under one roof. He can now take the thread or take the fiber and spin it into thread, take that thread and weave it into cloth, all under one roof. So like I said at the bottom, it's a very efficient system. It's called the Lowell factory system, and you do need to know that. And it would be as if you could make a car all in one place, all the pieces of it, and then assemble the car all in one place, which is unheard of. It just doesn't happen. Okay, so let's talk about free enterprise, because this is an important concept for you to know for this year, for the STAR test, and for just life in general, because this is how we operate in the United States. This is how we operate our economy. This is how we think of living here. And after this frame, I'm going to stop, and then we'll pick it up. We'll pick up the rest of it in another screencast. But if you look up at the top in the little corner, it's the freedom of choice and the right to a profit. So free enterprise is the capitalist system as we know it. And it had grown up since Jamestown, since the time when Rolfe brought tobacco to Jamestown, and the people in Jamestown realized, oh, this is the way we can make money. This is the way we're going to succeed. We're not going to succeed by digging around for gold that isn't here, and we're not going to succeed by sharing all of our profits. We're each going to plant our own tobacco, and we're going to sell it for as much as we can, okay? And then we're going to spend our money how we choose to. So this is what we call economic freedom and free enterprise. And ideally, as the last bullet point, in this type of system, there's low taxes and private property ownership is honored. And there's competition between businesses. So if you have, two different types of businesses that are spinning fiber into thread, and then you have businesses that need to buy that to weave it into cloth, the person who gives the best price is the one who's going to win. All right. And the other part of that is that people should be free to spend their money how they choose to. You shouldn't be told how you're supposed to spend your money. That's the other part of free enterprise. In other words, to make it easy, in 21st century terms, people here in the United States believe that we should be able to make our money how we choose. We should be able to set our own goals for ourselves and choose our own pathway. And the sky's the limit. If you work hard, you should be able to succeed. But the working hard is part of it. And then you should be able to choose how you're going to spend your money. If you're going to save it, if you're going to spend it, how you're going to spend it, where you're going to spend it. That's free enterprise. And if you're going to be a business, you have to make smart business choices. You're not in business to provide social welfare for people unless you choose to. If you choose to, that's your choice as a business. So that's free enterprise. It's choice and profit. That's what free enterprise is. Okay, we're going to stop there and we'll pick it up.